But everybody can pick something that they're sufficiently good enough at that if you stop looking at Instagram, you can be the guy out of that group that everybody knows as the strong guy.
When I have clinics, I have small clinics I'll have with just a handful of people. That's one of the things I try to get them to wrap their head around is where do you want to be long term? Not like longevity wise, right? I don't even want to think about that. Like, where do I want to be in 10 years? Where do you want to be in like 4 years? And then work back. Because I think that takes and reduces a lot of the stupid shit that people end up doing. Where if I've used the example of somebody that's just their technique's awful, just terrible. And they're in 4 years they want to and have potential. So in 4 years, 3 years, they want to break an all-time world record. Potential's there from the jump. Technique's not. So I usually ask people, how many meets do you think this is going to take? Or it could be strongman. Say they want to make the nationals, whatever it's going to be. How many shows do you think this is going to take? And they're going to say, whatever they're going to say, it doesn't matter. Because you got to add 2 or 3 more. Because they don't, how many go the way you want, right? You've competed 50 times, 5?
Yeah.
So not very many. But when you back it off like that and then say, okay, here's when this realistically can happen. You're looking at 6 meet cycles. Then your form sucks. So if we just took 3 solid blocks and just hyper-focused on your technique, and built some body, good solid muscle to be able to handle the punishment that will come later. Because at some point in time, you're not going to be able to do the same type of volume to handle that punishment. So let's build this. They're more compliant when you work back like that. Now, if they just come in from the get-go, say, I want to do this. Okay, cool. Listen, for the next 16 weeks, I probably won't have you squat over 60%. Now, other stuff, they're going to do at higher percent ranges. But we're just going to work on your skill. Fuck you. I want to lift heavy. It's 2 different. I wish people would spend more time. I was fortunate to have people to say, hey, look, I think you can total your elite. It's going to take about this long. Here's what you're going to have to do. I don't know. I was fortunate. And most people don't think like that. Or what I found very interesting through the podcast over the past year is people who actually get what they wanted. Right, so they have this 4-year plan, or say it's strongman, they want a pro card, or win world strongest man, or whatever, and then they do it. Then they're fucked. they kind of, it's a good fucked, right? But then they're like, well, what now? Because usually it's a big shift. Like, yes, they want to repeat, but in their mind, they're like, you know what? I've put a lot into this. My family sacrificed a lot. Maybe there's a way that I can leverage this for something else, which they never really thought of before, good, bad, or indifferent, but now that becomes part of the whole game, where it's a weird thing, because they're not willing to say, okay, in the next 4 years.
Yeah, that's...
You see what I'm saying? So now it's like, I can get 1 more year, and it's like, oh, okay, it's a bonus year. Then they start doing dumb shit.
Well, it's funny you say that too about strongman, because there was a thing that was talked about. It was before all these other divisions existed, because in the beginning it was just the big guys. It was open, and then they added the middle. It was the lightweight class back then, 231 and under. God help you if you're 235. You're in with the big motherfuckers, but. They called it the curse of the middleweight, because there was a run of guys that would get their pro card, and then they just would stop competing. It's like, what do I do next? That's a thing when you do win that top show, and you're like, okay, how am I going to build off of this? Now, there've been some guys, you get, the Kevin Fairs and the Rob Kearney and the Andrew Claytons, who were badass middleweights, and they were like, well, obviously I'm going heavy, and they had a very, very successful career. That mentality doesn't exist with a lot of people. A lot of people, even if they're good athletes in that bracket, are terrified of getting out of their comfort zone. Nick Camby's on that tear right now, and I think he's going to do some big things in the next couple of years. That's a good example of somebody who I think has a plan, because he topped out as a middleweight. And if you look at all the people at the top, you can kind of gauge how close they are. The easiest way is to look at their static numbers, and you can kind of get a general impression of how good they are at moving events and stuff like that. Camby had the biggest gap between first place and second place at any given contest of anybody that I've seen in recent history. And it was just like, okay, this guy's on another level. I mean, he hit the Clash, Worlds, another big middleweight show. I forget off the top of my head. But anyways, he won like the 3 biggest shows that were available, and now he's on track. But I look at him and I think of somebody like this, somebody that knows where he wants to be. He grinded. He took like 4th place at America's Strongest Man for like multiple years in a row. It was like 6th place and 4th place and 3rd place. And it's like, okay, you have to grind. You have to be able to have a sustainable cycle to do that. And you have to be focused. You have to know what the end game is. Once he hit that, he spent about a year in the sunshine where he's like, oh, I'm the king of the hill right now. And now it looks like that cycle's starting over. So it's a rare thing to see, but that's brilliant. Working backwards, I think, is absolutely crucial. That also gets hard. It all goes back to, who are you giving the advice to? Because that's going to look different for different people. If you are the guy that's going to get to that point, you're the 0.1% that can sit on top of the mountain, or that even has the potential to sit on top of the mountain. That's going to be very different than most of the people who, and this is something that I don't think I beat, this is a drum I don't think I beat hard enough, which is that people need to reframe their idea of excellence. If I had to write a motivational book, this would be the crux of it. It would be the fact that everybody can demonstrate excellence in something. It might not be the thing you want. You can't roll out of bed and be like, I want to be an astronaut tomorrow. You got to go back to when you were born and what your influences were and what you have available. But everybody can pick something that they're sufficiently good enough at, that if you stop looking at Instagram and you stop looking at the world stage, if you actually take inventory of where your sphere of immediate influence is, how many people do you talk to on a weekly basis? You take that 15, 20 people, you can be the guy out of that group that everybody knows as the strong guy, or as, the guy, oh, so-and-so works out. You don't have to reach this level of world-class excellence to be great. And that's within reach for just about everybody that picks up a barbell. You can be the guy in your group, the person that, goes to the store. People know you work out. You can change the way you see yourself, your idea of how capable you are, your idea of being useful or desirable, whatever it might be, if you focus on your immediate sphere of influence. So those people, going to what we were talking about, which is working backwards. I mean, set your sights. If you're starting out, or if you've been grinding for a long time, you're disillusioned. If you're one of the unfortunate people that actually gets discouraged by social media because everything in your face is people that look like fucking aliens and are lifting just stupid amounts of weight. If you can set that endpoint at somewhere reasonable, attainable, valuable, substantive, you can work back, and it's an easy trek, man. It's an easy trek as long as you know where you're going. So everybody has that endpoint they can look at, and then the rest is just filling in structure. It's implementing the things we talked about, right? It's taking notes, getting a baseline, moving forward, figuring out how you adapt. And it's one of the things I love about strength training. It's like, high jump is not that trainable. You're not going to get somebody to put 30 inches on their high jump, whatever. Just about everybody can gain a sufficient amount of mass, chip away, and get substantially stronger over the years. So it's not lost for anybody. I
really like the way that you framed that, because if there's something that I'm not good at, it's that working with people in the industry, or just as clients or people that I'm mentoring on strength and conditioning, to do that, right? I'm always here, like elite, I'm always going to this other realm, because it's just the bubble I live in and the world I live in. Most people don't want that, right? They don't want to compete. Should I know that? 95% of my customers don't and will never compete. Where that framework that you just put there is awesome, because they can definitely do that, right? Granted, they may live right next door to John Hack, but for most people, they can do that, right? And that checks all boxes. It takes care of the commitment. It takes care of all the problems that typically you're going to run into with strength and conditioning. It's not always a walk in the park. There's always going to be days you don't want to do it. There's all these other things where that can provide that enough motivation for everybody to be able to say, yeah, if I do this, then I can be the person that they're going to say, what should I do to increase my bench?